Hey, Aneil, how's it going?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, thanks so much for your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yeah, no problem.
Just to start, Surge is such a powerful film in so many ways, and it's a project you've been kind of working on for a number of years. What was it like to actually get to make it?
Yeah, it was surprisingly enjoyable actually, because considering the kind of, like you say, the kind of duration of the journey and the kind of stress that comes with that, and the kind of challenges that came with the development period, because in many ways it's quite a it's trying to deal with such kind of abstract and slightly esoteric kind of themes sometimes that trying to harness that and get it onto a page and a kind of film that worked and a script that works was, had its challenges. So considering the kind of like arduous task of trying to kind of nail that, and added to that the kind of classic first feature experience stories that you hear all about, you kind of assume it's going to be a complete slog, but I really found it like a brilliant experience. I mean, it was stressful, of course. There were a lot of locations. There was something like 40 different 30 or 40 different locations in 25 days or whatever it was. There was a huge cast. It was a very dynamic film, obviously, so physically it was kind of taking its toll, though more so on Ben and the DOP than me probably. But it was quite kind of it was a really positive experience, and we were lucky enough to have an amazingly well talented but also kind of giving and generous cast and crew and everything. It was like, I mean, it seems so alien now to think about it, but it was this kind of baking hot, heaving summer back in 2019, when London was just like it used to be. And that's that kind of energy of London, that kind of throbbing, kind of slightly dangerous but slightly kind of brilliant energy that you get in London during summer in these kind of particular spots was kind of what started the whole kind of journey. It was kind of beat that I made with Ben, a short film a long time ago, was kind of a response to that, the energy of the kind of city and things like that, and or a response to kind of that many humans living that closely together, and so it was kind of all quite fitting that it yeah, sorry, slightly rambling, but it was great. Yeah.
One thing I must say is, you're talking about London. You seem to capture the chaos of London, but in a very natural way. With all those different locations, where you initially, quite apprehensive about, those scenes, and how much of a challenge was it?
Do you mean in the sense of apprehension about shooting them in such kind of hectic environments? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've always really enjoyed that. I've always kind of relished the challenge of, I'm not from London, but I moved here when I was quite young and have always been kind of fascinated by, a city this large and this kind of complicated. And I've always relished the challenge of trying to kind of harness that energy that we all know in London and put it on the screen. And I suppose, there's lots of projects that do that really well. But I suppose growing up watching film and TV, I always thought there were these kind of stock versions of London that didn't ring very true to me. Um, the kind of ones. There's like the Richard Curtis kind of saturated version, and then there's the kind of spooksy kind of blue, or there's kind of council estate heavy version or whatever. So I always relished trying to kind of get that authentic London kind of energy that we all know on screen. Yeah, no. So even from the earliest kind of short films, I did. I really wanted to shoot in in the real London and kind of embrace the kind of unpredictability and kind of chaos you get with that. So back when I was doing short films, I was always trying to kind of place the actors in. I was always kind of drawn to quite kind of heaving parts of London for a start, with a kind of rawness to them as well, I suppose. And then I was always keen to place the actors kind of within that. I used to kind of be keen on getting very long lens and staying very far away. So what that meant was the people around the actors, had no idea what was taking place, and you just got that kind of authentic. I mean, especially making short films for so little money, it felt like the best kind of production value you could get as well, you know, because you obviously didn't have money for extras, but you could kind of use the reality of London to get the kind of best, the real energy. And I've always relished that. And with Surge, it did come with its own, you know, challenges. You know, after he robs that first bank and he's going down that street, you know, it was absolutely like, yeah, it was heaving. The amount of people on that street, it's quite a kind of like lively spot in London. So kind of the amount of there were kind of there was such a kind of vast cross section of human beings there, and you know, the cameras negotiating all that. Ben is, but I think it takes a kind of actor, very specific kind of actor, to kind of want that and kind of lean into that. And I think Ben specifically kind of completely buzzed off that. And yeah, I'm always trying to kind of create the kind of context on set that the actor can kind of live the experience as much as possible, really.
Does that sort of documentary style filming, you know, when we actually follow, you know, Ben Whishaw's character, was that, you know, the concept, you know, from day one, that's how you wanted to do it, or was that something that kind of grew, an idea that grew in your mind?
Yeah, so that's always how I wanted to go about it. And even though I didn't want it to be, you know, we wanted it to, like everyone does, we wanted it to look good and be cinematic and all of that stuff. But I wanted, because there was something that, so for instance, with rehearsal and things like that, there was something that felt a bit incongruous with the character's experience about over rehearsing. You know, the idea is, in a sense, that this character is kind of being reborn and experiencing everything anew again. You know, he's been kind of living in his head in this kind of fog, like a lot of us live in, and he's kind of waking up and living these experiences for the first time, in a sense, even though he's been living them every day for however many years. And so there was something about that newness that didn't really chime for me with rehearsing a scene and trying to nail it. And it was, you know, Ben and I, though we didn't rehearse in great depth, we spoke a lot. We had a lot of discussions about each scene and what was going on and where he was at emotionally and kind of where he was at on his journey. But in terms of executing it, I wanted it to be kind of as live and, yeah, in a sense, like you said, documentary and real as possible. So did various things, like, for instance, if he was going into a location that he hadn't been in before, that this wouldn't be his flat or his parents' house or something, but say a bank or a shop or a hotel, Ben wouldn't see that until you were shooting the first take. So he'd go into it on that first take, you know, genuinely, you know, and it was a genuinely new place for him. Of course, you know, you'd have to do more than one take, but in that first take, you might get some of that kind of liveness about experiencing something for the first time. And likewise with characters who he hadn't met before, people in the airport, as in passengers and things like that, bank cashiers and whatnot. I'd make sure they didn't meet until, you know, the first time they had to, when we were filming. And there was something kind of good about that. Even when you were on take 3 or 4 or something, it still meant him and the bank cashier had only interacted as in character, and they hadn't, you know, done the kind of small talk in the kind of unit base or something, and kind of done the kind of actor chat thing. So yeah, I think I'm glad we did that. And again, Ben kind of, and the other characters relished that, I think.
We see, you know, this character go through, you know, a complete mental breakdown. And when I was watching it, I was like, you know, can someone not just, you know, help him? You know, kind of step in, help this guy that's in distress? Would you say there's a kind of social commentary there that, you know, modern day society, you know, our first act is not to necessarily step in and help someone in that kind of situation?
Yeah, I didn't want to be too kind of on the nose with social commentary. I mean, I wanted to kind of look at mental health, but in a slightly more in a not kind of super precise or prescriptive kind of way, because I guess what's inspired the whole journey, in a sense, is society's ideas about what constitutes normal, you know, behavior, and what constitutes good mental health and poor mental health, and about this kind of social contract that we've all kind of kind of sleepwalked into to an extent over the course of decades or centuries or whatever it is, about how we should behave. And you know, it's about somebody kind of undoing that, really, and starting to kind of tear up that contract and start living on you know, in a way that's true to his kind of animal instincts, I suppose, in a sense. So yeah, he's absolutely going through a very kind of raw and deep and troubling mental experience in a sense. But I didn't want to say, oh, this is that, or this is that, this is, you know, bad, or this is good, because I think it's much more complicated and kind of murky than that. But in terms of people helping him, yeah, I mean, I remember when I first made Beat with Ben, which wasn't kind of a short of this, but it was a kind of, you know, precursor to it, I suppose. I was interested about how people react to characters like this, and how, you know, you look down at your shoes and you keep going until you're 10 meters beyond them, or people cross the road, or people just suddenly, you know, people are very ready to kind of put that person in a box of, okay, troubled, dangerous person, and separate themselves, you know, emotionally and physically from that experience, from that person, as soon as possible. And I think there is something sort of horribly impersonal about living in a city that's big. You know, it's that classic kind of paradox of you're surrounded by people, but you're kind of deeply isolated in a sense. And but yeah, I didn't want to say anything too on the nose about that. I mean, it's interesting to think about what's changed over the past year in terms of that and how we relate to each other. I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out. But yeah.
One thing I want to ask as well, that hotel room scene, not to give anything away, is, you know, organised chaos, if you will. Is that something, you know, that was scripted, or was it a case that, you know, on the day you were kind of, you know, ad-libbing it, so to speak?
Well, it was scripted, in the sense that I'd had this idea for this scene, because I think in many ways that what Joseph is trying to do is grasp at a kind of deeper experience of the world, and kind of scratch underneath the kind of surface of, you know, this kind of surface, quite thin existence that we all kind of live, you know, work, eat, sleep, kind of, you know, commute, etc. And that seemed like a really interesting kind of metaphor for trying to kind of like literally look inside the world. And, you know, there was also some kind of interesting kind of thing about kind of, because he's got this relationship with his mother, and in the mattress he kind of goes inside it and it's kind of womb-like and things. So it was interesting. But in answer to your question, there was that we scripted something, but then, you know, we had the reality of trying to find a hotel room where we could actually do this, and designing it and things like that. And that was a huge challenge, as you can imagine. I mean, we completely lucked in the end, because we found a hotel that had a whole floor that it was about to completely renovate. And it still meant we couldn't, you know, didn't mean we could destroy the room, but it meant we could empty the room, build our own room, and then do what we wanted. But again, like I was talking about with the kind of liveness and the trying to give Ben that freedom, what we did was we created a hotel room that was where everything was, literally everything was breakable. And then instead of being prescriptive about this, we kind of just gave Ben the room, and we followed him around that. And we had repeats on a couple of things, but largely it was just one experience, really. And I remember Ben saying that it was a real like joy, that scene.
You know, just one final question for you. Obviously, with everything going on the past year, you know, filmmaking's been, you know, pretty tricky. What is it that you've been working on? Have you been writing? What have you got in the pipeline?
Yeah, so I haven't personally been filming, although I've done. I did a music video in the middle of it, but generally, broadly speaking, I haven't been filming, and I've missed it. But at the same time, I feel like I might have dodged a bullet in terms of, like, I think it will be easier in the next kind of over the course of the next year. So I've been I'm attached to a couple of feature projects that I've come on board to, and at the same time I've been trying to slowly develop a couple of ideas of my own. but yeah, that's been a slow process. Sadly, I'm not one of those directors with like a little black book of like 50 killer ideas, or even 50 average ideas. They're just very, like Serge, I suppose, they're always quite slow to come through, and I just have to kind of let that pace be. But yeah, I've been doing what a lot of people have been doing, trying to be creative in a slightly difficult time. Also got a toddler, so that's been obviously quite a focus. And then but yeah, hopefully some things will start moving in the next year.
Yeah, it sounds like things are certainly vamping up for you. Well, it's been great chatting with you, Aneil. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Nice one, Thomas. It's nice to meet you, and thank you for chatting.
Yeah, good luck with film's release, okay?
Okay, cheers, mate.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey